Okay, welcome everybody. This is, I believe, the first Q&A, Wednesday night Q&A session on this new Clear Mountain Monastery YouTube channel. My name is Ajahn Kovilo. I'm one of the two monks who's spearheading this project. Tan Nisabho, who's the other monk, and he's really the tip of the spear. He's the one who's actually going to be, boots on the ground. He'll be coming into the Pacific Northwest, somewhere on what he calls what he's looking for, the quiet periphery of Seattle. I believe at the beginning of July. So, but I will hopefully be tapping into the community, coming and visiting in the winters and maybe in the summers over the next couple years. So yeah, Tan Nisabho and I were thinking that these Wednesday night sessions could be an opportunity for people to ask further questions, probably on into the future. What we'll try to do is have our Sunday morning talks. So on this channel there will be talks every Sunday morning from 8 to maybe 8:45, and those all will have a specific sutta, a specific discourse of the Buddha, which will be linked to, and that will be the focus of the discussion. And there'll be a short, maybe 10-minute Q&A for those. We've had one of them so far. And then this Wednesday evening Q&A will be kind of a follow-up on that. So this past Sunday, I was talking about the duties of a monk from the Sigalika Sutta. So these are duties of a monk to basically help to encourage non-monks, lay people, to not do things which are unwholesome, unhelpful, to encourage them to do things which are good, to always have a mind of compassion and sympathy towards lay people, to let them hear to things which they haven't heard yet, and to clarify things which they have heard, and just in general to practice the teaching. This evening I had, since we're kind of figuring this out, I had put another sutta, which I just love, as the possible topic of discussion. But really, this is just a chance for us to, get to know the little digital versions of all of you, and the questions don't have to be just around the narrow focus of the sutta which we discussed Sunday, or whatever the topic that we've listed. Things are pretty open. Yeah, so hopefully it looks like there was a little bit of a trouble with the link to this evening's primary focus, which is the Maha Asapura Sutta. That's Sutta number 39 in the Majjhima Nikaya. That's this brown edition in the Wisdom publication series. But I think that I was able to open that link, so hopefully others were as well. Maybe just a little bit of a background for people who are taking a look at it. It might not be so readily apparent or understandable why this would be a discourse which people who are not monks would be interested in, because the whole language of the discourse is kind of circling around what it means to be a samana, or a recluse. So the main thrust, the primary question which this discourse is addressing is recluses, O monks, bhikkhus, that is how people perceive you, and when you are asked, what are you? You claim that you are recluses, or samanas. Since that is what you are designated, and what you claim to be, you should train thus. We will undertake and practice those things that make one a recluse, that make one a Brahmin, so that our designations may be true, and our claims genuine, and so that the services of those whose robes, alms food, resting place, and medicinal requisites we use shall bring them great fruit and benefit, and so that our going forth shall not be in vain, but be fruitful and fertile. So that's great, and it makes sense for a samana, for a religious seeker, that we wear these robes, we shave our head, we've got all these external kind of symbols that we're doing something different with our lives. So we should actually try to be cultivating the inner virtues which go along with that external form, with the color that we wear, with the style of robes that we wear every single day. But the list of qualities that are gone into in this discourse, I think really do have a more universal focus. It's not just something for monks and nuns. They're really qualities of mind which anyone who's serious about spiritual practice, which obviously all of you are, because you're taking time on your Wednesday night to come and watch somebody like me talk about Dhamma. So yeah, I think most people who would be tuning in do consider themselves spiritual seekers to some extent, and probably your friends also know that you're a spiritual seeker, and this is just part of your identity. You probably don't have the shaved head, don't have the robes, but maybe you do have a t-shirt that says Dharma Bum, or maybe you've got the hat, with the Buddha Dhamma Chaka, like the Dhamma wheel on it, or 1,000 other kind of subtle symbols that you can be kind of signaling to other people. Kind of if you go out and you see somebody else with a Dhamma Chaka, one of these Buddha wheels, or the wheel of the Dhamma on a t-shirt, oh, that's one of my people. And so it's this type of thing. And if you're giving off those signals, then it's good to be trying to cultivate the inner virtues that go along with that. So one thing you'll notice with that initial reading is that the Buddha says, you should train thus. You should train thus. So this is a refrain or rejoinder which comes up probably 12 or 13 times throughout the discourse. I'll just give you a bit of a preview. So the first one is bhikkhus, or here let's frame it as spiritual aspirants. You should train thus. We will be possessed of wholesome shame and fear of wrongdoing. That is how you should train yourself. Then it goes on, you should train yourself. Our bodily conduct will be pure, our verbal conduct, our mental conduct, etc., etc. Thus you should train yourself. So at Abhayagiri, Tan Nisabho and myself put together a book years ago called Thus You Should Train Yourself, which is basically every time in the Pali canon when the Buddha uses this exact rejoinder, this exact kind of admonition to the monks and to the lay people. There are many instances where he uses this to refer to lay people, especially to Anathapindika. Thus, householder, should you train yourself? And it's a fascinating it's a fascinating way of teaching, basically. In a way, you can think of them as, just like personal mottos, or this is an affirmation even. So these are basically Buddhist affirmations, like I will be someone who is possessed of wholesome shame and fear of wrongdoing. And they occur sporadically all throughout the canon. But this discourse, the Maha Asapura Sutta, is probably the most systematic in laying out those things that we should be training ourselves in. So, and feel free if anyone has any questions on this to just pop them up. They pop up on the screen that I'm looking at, so that works for me. one thing which is interesting to note, just about that general framework, before we even go into any of the specifics of what the Buddha is saying you should train yourself in, are this: you should train yourself. And this is a somewhat problematic term in English, so much so that I've even heard Buddhist teachers, I've even heard a monk say this, that there are no shoulds in Buddhism. There are no shoulds in Buddhism. And in a way, it's true. The English word should is just so bound up with issues of power, issues of authority, and basically we have these Judeo-Christian, oftentimes negative connotations of shalt. So fortunately, Bhikkhu Bodhi, said you should train yourself, and did not go back to the kind of King James shalt. He's not shouting us or doing any kind of other kind of overt power vocabulary. But thus you should train yourself. So what does it mean when the Buddha said that you should train yourself in a certain way? We've gone a little bit into what it doesn't mean. It doesn't mean that the Buddha is saying, if you don't do this, you'll go to hell, or I'm going to make you go to hell. Those are totally foreign concepts to the Dhamma of the Buddha. It doesn't mean if you don't do this, then you should feel bad about yourself. It doesn't mean this is something which you should just browbeat yourself about and basically take as a self-flagellatory kind of just another thing to beat yourself up about. When conceiving of what this might mean, it can be useful to go back to the Pali. So this phrase, thus you should train yourself, is in Pali, evan hivo sikhitabang. So evan, thus, vo is you all, you guys, you people. Sikhitabang, sikha, sikhati, means to train. And it's related to the modern day Thai word for education is based on that siksa. So it's basically, thus you should educate yourself. Thus you should learn. And so that's the root, sikh, of this word sikhitabang, should train yourself. But where's the should come in? Sikhitabang is what's called a future passive participle. And this isn't just kind of unuseful grammar tips. It's actually in each part of that grammatical term, there's, the way that I see it, significant Dhammic implications. So future, this is a future passive participle. It's any time you say, this ought to be done, or this should be done. The future aspect is that the Buddha is saying this is something which you might not be doing now, but which would be good to be doing on into the future. So future. The passive is indicating, this is a passive verb form or passive participle form, which is not active. So this is not God, or this is not the Buddha like forcing you. This is not an imperative. This is not a command. The Buddha is not commanding you to do all of these things. This is a suggestion. This is something which could be done. So it's passive. And a participle is a type of speech which kind of blends its part adjective and its part verb. So it participates in being both a verb and an adjective. So in its verbal form, we translate it as should plus whatever the root is, which is here sikhati. So thus you should train. Or jhani tabang, thus you should know. Or pretty much most other verbs you can do this with. Thus you should walk, thus you should be, thus you should live. That's the verbal form. But in its adjectival form, it actually, it's cognate with the English ending able, so trainable. So these are things which are trainable for you. These are things which are trainable for you. So that kind of, a bit of a deep dive into Pali grammar for people who, it's a rare person who's interested in Pali grammar. So thank you for, if you haven't tuned out, that's patient endurance, way to go. But yeah, I think these things are significant. So check for any questions before going on into the meat of the sutta. Okay. Yeah, so we got one question about, can you give any advice on how to use shame skillfully and not let it get into unskillful self-judgment? Thank you. So this is related to that first training, which in the Bhikkhu Bodhi edition is bhikkhus, or spiritual aspirants. You should train yourselves thus. We will be possessed of shame and a fear of wrongdoing. So again, the word shame here and the word fear of wrongdoing are Pali terms which are entirely wholesome. Hiri is what's translated as shame, and otapa is what's translated as fear of wrongdoing. And these are terms which are unambiguously wholesome. So this is one beautiful thing about Pali, is that in English, we've got, the number of words in the English language, numbers in the hundreds of thousands, just because we borrow words from all different sources, from numerous different time periods and different different worldviews, really. Whereas the Pali is basically just used in Buddhist contexts. So you have words which are, imbued with a very singular Dhammic meaning. So this word hiri and otapa are only bright qualities. In the Abhidhamma contexts, they're referred to as just bright or beautiful mind states, entirely beautiful. There's nothing, this type of shame that the Buddha is talking about is a type of shame which there's no downside to. So it's basically intelligent recognition of one's own shortcomings is one way of thinking about it. And yet using shame skillfully. I think just in the question there's kind of a bit of the answer. Like, you have to figure out ways to use it skillfully and look inside about how you're using it. Are you beating yourself over the head with something that you did in the past? If so, then that's a type of aversion and is to be avoided. Or are you just looking at something you did in the past and saying, oh, that was unwholesome. That was something which led to my own detriment, or it led to the harm of others. It led to, just all sorts of trouble for both parties, myself and the other person. And you can just look at it from this kind of this third story. So by that I mean, rather than your own narrative that you've got about how good you are, how bad you are. If we're talking about shame, it's usually how bad you are, how unrestrained you are, etc. And then you have the stories of someone else, which your family members, they might have the same story, that, Kovilo is this totally unrestrained monk, and he's totally shameless. Or they might have a differing view that, Kovilo is totally inspiring and totally restrained all the time. But this third story is just a more detached and really just realistic look at what one is what one is doing and what one has done. And it's not tainted, it's not tinged with the aversive or self-congratulatory biases that we're apt to slather onto our own self-view. So you can kind of get a feeling for it. Honestly, you can get a visual of it. You can get a visual of it. If you just look in the mirror, oftentimes, there's not a one-to-one correlation of, facial affect and inner emotion, but there is some correlation, especially if you're just by yourself and you're not trying to put a show on for anybody. I'm sure you can see this in other people as well. When someone is browbeating themselves, they don't call it browbeating for nothing. The face, there's this, it's actually a psychological term. There's the omega sign. So basically you have this kind of, your brows furrow into this kind of, Greek omega sign, because you're totally just hating on yourself. And so take a look in the mirror sometime, and you might not even realize how dark you're going in the direction of. That can be one way to kind of literally, shine a light on how you're doing internally. But aside from that external, you can feel it. There's almost a darkening of the mind. How do you quantify? How do you explain that? Maybe like a metaphor is, if you open your eyes like as wide as they can go, your iris, your eyeball is literally taking in more light. So if you do that right now, you are literally taking in more light. And if you close, kind of squint your eyes, you're taking in less light. And there's an equivalent feeling, an equivalent inner feeling when you're thinking unwholesome thoughts. The mind darkens, and I think that's the best I can kind of give an analogy for at the moment of what that feels like. But this topic of hiri and ottappa are very interesting to contemplate. The Buddha also called them guardians of the world. This is what makes social relationships. This is what makes community. This is what makes society healthy. Is when you have these guardians of the world, healthy shame and healthy fear of wrongdoing. Because you can use it both prospectively, in the things that you're thinking about doing. This is relating to the Ambalataka Sutta, Majjhima 61, I believe, when the Buddha is talking to his son Rahula about how he should think about what he's, his good deeds or his bad deeds, what he's doing. And the Buddha says, before you do something, think about it. Is this action that I'm going to do, is it going to lead to self-affliction, to the affliction of others, to the affliction of both? Is it a unhelpful, unskillful action with painful consequences, painful results? If it is, then you shouldn't do it. So that's basically using this quality of hiri to think about the future. So this sense of shame, would I be ashamed of, to do this thing? And for a monk, for us as monastics, it's a bit more clear. The standards of our ethics are more clear. We've got 6 books of the Buddhist discipline, which the Buddha laid out specifically, all the thousands of things which we can do and can't do and should do, etc. And so it's clear for us. So there is this kind of sense of shame. Like if I was to go out and start, publicly killing, if I was to go out hunting, and post on it, my social media page. I don't have a social media page, I don't think. But if I did, then that would be something which would be shameful. I would be, being a bad ambassador of the ochre robes. But also for you all, if you wear your Dhamma Chaka, your wheel of the Dhamma hat, or you've got your different symbols, you're telling your friends, oh yeah, I go to Buddhist church, and I go to the monastery every once in a while, and I go and meditate. If you're telling your friends about meditate, or you've got your meditation app, and you've got your all the people who follow you on your meditation app, etc., then to do things which are ethically questionable, then there's a bit of a disjunct. There's this dissonance with the person who you're displaying to the world and what's actually going on inside. So you can use this sense of shame to think about the future, and you can use it to think about the present. This is the second thing which the Buddha recommended his son Rahula to think about. While you're doing an action, you can reflect, is this action that I'm doing of body, speech, or mind? Is it leading to self-affliction, to the affliction of others, to the affliction of both? Is it an unskillful, unhelpful action with painful consequences, painful results? If it is, Rahula, you guys, Kovilo, don't do that. Stop doing it. Stop doing it. That's hiri. That's the sense of shame. In the Buddha's, he's telling his son, you should be ashamed in this way. And in English, it sucks that we don't have a better word than shame. Some people might prefer guilt. I don't know why. Guilt and shame are both so problematic in English. You always have to preface the Pali term with just wholesome or skillful. Skillful shame, skillful fear of wrongdoing, fear of the consequences. And you can think about the past, as I had already mentioned. Just reviewing. The things that I did today. Did it lead to self-affliction, the affliction of others, the affliction of both, etc.? If it was, then I should not do it in the future. And the Buddha further says, because by this time his son Rahula had already ordained as a novice, which would have been super cute. I would love to have seen Rahula as people speculate that he was about 7 years old when he went forth as a little novice. So anybody who's been to Thailand, you've seen these cute little kid novices. Maybe that's what Rahula was like. So he tells Rahula, in addition to just saying, okay, I'm not going to do this in the future, you can actually tell someone. The Buddha says, okay, you determine, I'm not going to do this in the future. That thing I did was shameful. It was, it was ugly. It was unbeautiful. This is another way to think about it, is just what's beautiful, what's unbeautiful as us being practitioners. These are things in the realm of morality. But so to continue with this strand of, once you've realized that you've done something bad, then you can tell your spiritual companion. So as monks and nuns and novices, we, every 2 weeks, we've got the Patimokkha, we recite our rules, and then we can make confession. We make confession at that time, and we tell one of our spiritual companions, like one of our fellow monastics, how we transgressed, in what way, and then we say, I aspire, or I will determine to show restraint in the future. So that's one way to further train. You can find your friend, and different friends have different skill sets. So if you have a friend who is just impeccable in speech, they never lie, they never speak harshly, they never tale bear, they're never going to gossip about anybody, then with them you can go to them if you're having trouble in that realm. So I can go to my, beautiful speaking monk friends and say, oh yeah, I told this small lie, the other day, or I kind of spoke harshly about somebody the other day, and then they'll say, oh, you should show restraint in the future. There's a Pali term for that. But if that's what we do as monks, but for lay people, it'll just be a normal conversation, and you can figure out what the dynamics will be for what works for you. Because the formality of the monk confession is probably a bit too formal for most non-monks. But it's a great thing. Working with your friends, having a commitment buddy, different commitment strategies, and someone who you're accountable to. Accountability buddy. That's another term for it. So we've got people on the East Coast, another Clear Mountain person, that's probably Tan Nisabho. So right now Tan Nisabho is in visiting the Empty Cloud Monastery, which is the monastery established by Ayasoma and Bhante Sudaso, with Tan Sumino there as well. And they have a monastery in New Jersey, maybe half an hour from New York City, and he's visiting there, visiting that community, and just tapping in, seeing what works there. They've created really a thriving community. Probably I've visited there at least, I think once, maybe twice, but probably have the most diverse group of people who attend the monastery of anywhere I've ever been. Diverse in every sense of that word, age-wise, children up to, the oldest person you can imagine. Maybe not that quite old, but the whole age range. Gender, sexuality, race, ethnicity. They've got everything. So it's a beautiful monastery. Yes, actually, I'll be going to visit Empty Cloud as well in June for maybe 3 weeks, I think. So maybe before jumping back into this Maha Asapura Sutta, or talking more about Hiri Ottappa, maybe just an announcement. Tan Nisabho, in addition to spearheading the Clear Mountain Monastery project, which is the aspiration for a forest monastery in the for a Thai influenced forest monastery in the Seattle area, has also spearheaded, or with his family, his mother and father have created another community called the Cascade Hermitage, which is in the Methow Valley in Winthrop, which is just a couple hours east of Seattle. And both Clear Mountain Monastery and the Cascade Hermitage have websites that you can check out. And Tan Nisabho will be conducting live retreats the final Saturday and Sunday of each month. I believe that begins in July. Yes, maybe June, but yes, perhaps starting in June, but then ongoing. There'll be weekend retreats at the Cascade Hermitage, and those will also be live streamed for people who can't actually make it there. June, okay, thank you. And you can also check out the Clear Mountain Monastery for a list of our other talks, basically every Sunday morning, 10 to 10:45. And Wednesday evenings, 6:30 to 7:15. And then there's also the first Monday, there's a community conversations from 7 to 8 p.m. So yes, feel free to keep checking those things out. I've got a little bit more time. Honestly, I could talk about and think about, and would love to hear what other people think about this topic of hiri and ottappa, of skillful shame and skillful fear of wrongdoing. We'll talk more about this. I'll be live streaming on Sunday morning at 10, and we'll continue with this same sutta. So there's no need to kind of try to force in all of the different trainings, all the different shoulds from this sutta. But yeah, hiri and ottappa. Another way that the Buddha kind of, and subsequent generations of commentators kind of distinguish these two qualities, is that one of them has an internal valence and the other one is more external. So hiri has this internal sense of just drawing away from something which is, let's call it unbeautiful, unethical conduct. So that's the internal sense, is the hiri. Like, oh, I don't want to do that. That's below me, or that's if I was to just get drunk like every night, that would be weird. I would feel weird about that. And yeah, that's this hiri. One simile which Buddhaghosa, the great commentator, kind of gave for this sense of hiri is like you've got a long pole. Yeah. So one end is hiri and one end is ottappa. The hiri end is covered in excrement. So that's the end which you're like, don't want to touch it, nasty, ugly, unbeautiful, ethical conduct, don't want to touch it. The other end of the pole is the ottappa, which has this external dimension. So I don't get drunk every night, not just because I would think that it would be ugly, but because other people would blame me. And so we've got the pole on one end, it's smeared with excrement. On the other end, the pole, this iron pole, has been heated and it's just glowing hot. It's basically on fire, and you don't want to touch that end because you'll get burnt. And similarly, there's this extrinsic or external kind of dimension of ottappa, which we don't do things that are morally questionable because other people would rightly criticize those things. And I'll just read to the bottom of this first training. So, you should train thus. We will be possessed of fear of shame and fear of wrongdoing. Now, bhikkhus, you may think thus: we are possessed of healthy shame and healthy fear of wrongdoing. That much is enough. That much has been done. The goal of recluseship has been reached. There is nothing more for us to do, and you may rest content with just that much. But, bhikkhus, I inform you, I declare to you, you who seek the recluse's status, basically this is shorthand for nibbana, those of you who seek a higher level, a more profound, a more subtle, a more higher and ultimate form of happiness, do not fall short of the goal of recluseship, nibbana, while there is more to be done. So, gosh, there's a lot here as well. Again, these are things which you might not hear in many Dhamma talks, maybe this sense of not resting content. And again, there's this is useful. We'll probably have to go into it on Sunday morning a bit more. But yes, we're not supposed to freak out. We're not supposed to run around like a chicken head if we're not doing everything that we can. But there is this slight this kind of, it's almost like the Buddha. It's almost as if the Buddha had his hand just on your back. He's got his hand on your back. Or if you're okay with the idea of the Buddha touching the back of your head, just this gentle touch, okay, Come on, Kovilo. Come on, guys. There's more to be done. There's more to be done. Just this gentle encouragement, which is always there until we reach Nibbana. There's more to be done. It's like the Buddha, the hand, you can think of the Dalai Lama, the hand touch is both saying, yes, you're doing a great job. You're doing a great job, but it's slightly pushing you forward. Okay, you're doing good, but don't become complacent. Is the gentle, we'll call it the Dalai Lama touch, the Buddha touch, this encouragement. Yeah, I inform you, you who seek the recluse estate, don't fall short of the goal of recluseship, where there is more to be done. So, maybe that's enough for tonight. It's been nice seeing everyone who's here tonight, and maybe for future Sundays, hopefully you'll join in. I believe Tan Nisabho will be doing next Wednesday, and yeah, that's in general. Tan Nisabho and I are going to try to have a two-person Q&A on the final Friday of each month, but this upcoming Wednesday I'm not free for some reason. So yeah, but in future months, wait, is that correct? Look in the calendar. Not sure about that. But yeah, hopefully maybe next week we will be doing it two-way. Whatever, you'll find out. If you come next week, you'll find out. So yeah, hope you all have a great rest of your Wednesday evening, and yeah, hope you continue to tune in to Clear Mountain Monastery schedule, and yeah, wish you all the best.